says this. Now, the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn over Saul, saying I've rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your home with oil and go. And I'm sending you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons. Now, when you look at this situation here, this is so much like us, and we've got to really, really take a look at this. There's a time to mourn, and the Bible talks about that. There's a time to move on, though, as well. And so as you look at this, Samuel now has lost track of time. He's going through a problem himself with God's decision. That's really what's happening. As Samuel is mourning, his mourning has been extended out of season. God says, listen, there's a time to mourn. And when you mourn, you're thinking of the past, right? Whenever you're mourning, you're not in the present. Though you may feel like you're mourning in the present, you really are reflecting on the past. You can't mourn in the future because you've never been in the future. So you really don't know what the future is going to behold. And since you've never been there, you don't know what mourning is on Tuesday if it's now Sunday. So the reality is, since you have no frame of reference, you've got to frame it from things of the past. I may lose my job on Tuesday. Well, if you know what it's like to have lost your job, if you've ever seen anyone, that's stuff from the past because it hasn't even happened yet. So when you begin to look at mourning, there is a time of reflecting on what could be, what could have been, how things may have worked if it had all worked out. There's a time for that. But then there's a time to move on. And as Samuel is losing track of time, God is now setting an alarm for Samuel to begin to wake up out of the siren song of mourning. Mourning, it has a call. It can call you into a slump that will be hard for you to get out of. There is an ordinate time to mourn. God says, listen, there's a lease for looking back. There's a lease for checking out and just wishing things may have been different than they are right now. But then there's a time to move on. And now God is now showing such great love by setting an alarm. At this point, grief is trying to overstay its welcome, right? It's overstaying its time. It knows how destructive it can be to the mind if it is continued to stay. If it is allowed to stay, the evil is in the excess. So when you begin to look at this is not just a feeling that the prophet is having. This is not just an emotional moment that he's having, but he's not aware that his emotions are about to usurp all authority in his life. He's about to be directed by emotions. God's making him aware that he knows what Samuel's doing. He knows what his emotions are doing, and he's going overboard. He's being extra. He's now being controlled by his emotions. That's what happens when we are doing anything out of season. There's a time and a season for everything under the sun. So at this point, there are many people who've been knocked down. There are many people who've been ostracized and marginalized. And you know what? Maybe you didn't even get the apology that you wanted. Maybe some of the things that would have just made you feel better have not happened yet. But yet God now begins to strike an alarm in your life saying, listen, enough is enough. It's really time for you to get out of this, because you don't realize that if you stay in this place of mourning, the end of mourning is you giving up your purpose. That's exactly what it's about. If mourning stays too long, you will live in your feelings. You'll get in your feelings, and they will no longer be feelings, but they'll be directors of your mentality. They'll be directors of your paradigm. Your perceptions will be filtered through this mourning. You will be a person in continual mourning. So everything is filtered through the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Everything is filtered through the worst thing that's ever been said to you. As you continue to mourn, you don't realize that you're protesting against God. Listen, there are things that have happened in our lives that we don't understand, but the Bible says the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. God is ordering every single thing around us. And there's some things that we look at, we want to blame the devil. We want to blame flesh, and we just want to do everything we can while truly protesting against God's decision. Mad at cancer, but really, in essence, mad at God for allowing it, knowing that he's sovereign. If you were ignorant of it, it would be a totally different thing. But this is for people who know that God's in charge. And when God does something we don't like, there's a way sometimes that we protest by prolonged mourning. David had the same situation when Uzzah touched the oxen and died right on the spot because he was not supposed to touch it. And David just went through a temper tantrum. He mourned, for an extended period of time. And what would have been a blessing for him had he actually just got things right and kept the ark going, he now that transfers to someone else, to Obed-Edom's house. And Obed-Edom's house is blessed. He's blessed by David's mishap, his inordinate mourning. So when you look at this, Samuel's in the same place. He's not on the same page with God. He's in his feelings, and his feelings have put him in retirement. He is in this place. And listen, I can tell you right now, there are things that have happened to people where you have just given up. You just made it a point that you're in retirement right now. Listen, when you're in retirement, you generally don't have a plan to go back. When you're in retirement, you've already said, listen, I've completed that assignment already. I'm done with that. Your feelings are letting you know, listen, don't put yourself through anymore. You don't have to go through any more of this. He's in this place of mourning, but he's still hurt by God's decision. The truth of the matter is he can't serve anymore truly by being in this place. He is really forfeiting his every momentum that was there. He's trying to give it. His feelings are calling him to throw in the towel. His feelings are waving a white flag right now. And Samuel forgot something, that he's not working with God as a partner. Listen, we don't get to just come in and say, hey, listen, buy me out. We're partners in this whole thing. And, I don't like the decision that you made. We forget that we are bought with a price. We work for God. We are not working with him as a partner. He gives us the privilege of being a co-laborer with him. But that in no way means that we are equal partners in this endeavor called life. We see in part, we know in part, and we speak in part. Samuel forgot that he was not a partner. He forgot his position. The arrangement is not that you serve me as long as you agree with me. The arrangement is not that you serve me as long as you have all the information you feel like you need. No, the agreement is that we serve God with absolute zeal, even if we do not understand him. We recognize his ways are not like our ways. His thoughts are not like our thoughts. As high as the heavens are above the earth, are his ways above our ways, and his thoughts above our thoughts. When you look at this, we're not required. This isn't about drag yourself through. Listen, at least just get it done. No, we're supposed to serve God with our whole hearts, ultimately, because what's been revealed to us is not like God's going to tell me everything. What's revealed is that God is sovereign, that he is the ultimate authority. And that's been a revealed truth to us. That's why we serve God. That's why we do what we do. Listen, many of us are struggling right now with, God, I don't understand. As if, listen, everything stops until you get to understand. Listen, what you have to understand is that God is right. What you have to understand clearly is what you're calling an election is. What you have to understand without a doubt is that if God has said it, then it's already settled in heaven. It's not up for debate, and you don't qualify to be at the table to make the decision. God is right, even if I can't explain his actions, even to myself. Listen, you have to understand that the fact that you know that God is right is the key to everything. Listen, when God doesn't move a way that we want him to move, we withdraw our service. And there's so many people right now that are getting a wake-up call, that God is waking you up saying, listen, I see what you're doing. You are now, by you just slowing down, by you just deciding you're not doing this, this, and this, you forgot your place. You've forgotten who you are. And this mourning over the fact that you've been hurt, the mourning over the fact that it didn't work out the way you wanted, the mourning over the fact that it didn't seem fair to you. Listen, God is moving in another direction. And the blessing is he's blowing a trumpet to wake you up so you can move into your future. Listen, right now, the present is being stagnated or soured by the morning. And so when we withdraw our service, we've decided, listen, we don't withdraw our allegiance. We still know what side our bread is buttered on. We still know who is God. But we just don't want to serve him the way that we served him again, because we may get hurt. We don't want to continue to put ourselves through, and we blame people, because that's the right thing to say. That's the politically correct thing to say, to blame people, to blame the choir director, to blame the pastor, to blame the deacons, blame whoever, the enablers over here. These mothers are just, there's just too much power. Blame whoever you want to blame. But the truth of the matter is your issue is with God. Your issue is with God. You put me here. You allowed me to be here. You let those people say those things about me. You allowed me to be hurt. You know my personality. You know my way, and you still put me here anyway. Your real issue is with God. You want to talk about how the people are. You want to talk about what they didn't do. But the truth of the matter is your protest is with God. You threw in the towel, not to them. You threw in the towel to God. You're telling God, I'm done. I'm done with that. I don't want to go through that anymore. As if that's really legitimate. The fact that I don't want to go through that, you don't understand what you're forfeiting. This is not just because God is sovereign and God is saying, listen, you're going to do what I tell you to do. Listen, God is trying to keep you from forfeiting such a beautiful expected end. Samuel's in a place right now, he can't imagine a need for him after what he's experienced. That was the best time in his life. That was the greatest time in his life. And he had no idea that God could make the latter day greater than the former day. He had no idea that God was saying, listen, those are not your best days. Those were great days. Those were good days, but those were not your best days. And now that you're here struggling with rejection, that's not even about you. Listen, I picked a king for me. Right? I told you not to pick a king, right? So I've got a king for myself, but that was never the king of my intention. That was the will of the people. I told you, let them have Saul, and here's what he's going to do. And he did exactly that. And here you are struggling with rejection when I'm coming into your house, blowing the trumpet saying, let's saddle up. We still have work to do. Listen, Samuel's just dealing with, first the people. They don't want my sons to be ruler over them. And then here I am. What am I, chopped liver? They don't come and unanimously vote for me. They've forgotten all my service. So here I am dealing with that. And then also feeling like God has rejected me. So this is, God now, has forgotten my personal choice. It almost seems like he's turned on me because I picked this guy, Saul. And God was like, I allowed you to pick Saul, and failure was a part of this. This was doomed to fail from the beginning, and failure was what I expected. Failure was what I wanted to happen. Nothing here happens outside of the planning of God. I told you this wasn't going to work. I wasn't going to let it work for you. I'm going to now bless you with another king. See, when you begin to look at this, it's God who interrupts and says, it's over. And I want you to receive that today, that somebody, God is saying, listen, it's over. The question is rhetorical, but God is actually saying it's over. How long are you going to mourn over Saul, saying I've already rejected him? That means that nothing you do is going to change the situation. No weeping, no crying out, no additional prayer, no turning your plate down. Nothing is going to change the will of God. Listen, some of us are confronted with that fact, and that's the thing that we're mourning over. Some of us confronted with the fact that, that's how it is. Listen, you got to get to the point where you understand that's how it is. There's some things you wanted that are not going to happen. There's some things you wanted for other people that are not going to come about. But you can't stay in mourning and then drag that into God's presence as if it's worship. And that's what God is trying to tell Samuel. Samuel hasn't stopped worshiping, but it's the pretense of worship. Listen, the fact that you're not in agreement with God, you got to get in agreement with God. And agreement with God does not mean you have all the details. Agreement with God is that he is true and that every man be a liar. That's agreement with God. Agreement with God is that, God, I know you're right, even though it doesn't seem like. Listen, I'm going to the lion's den. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, but this was not the wrong move. It was not the wrong move to allow them to throw me into this fiery pit. It was not the wrong move for me to be thrown into the pit, and left for dead like Joseph. It was not the wrong move. Joseph came back later and said, I get it now. What you guys meant this for my harm. You wanted to destroy me here, but God used that What was meant for evil, God used that for good. That's for our learning. Everything we're doing is for learning. If it's not for us, there are other people, but we're learning even for us. So God now puts an end to what flesh has intended to do. Flesh has intended to stop him in his feelings and getting him to torture himself with questions that God is not going to answer. And many of us, why? Listen, it's time to move on. You don't have to know why to obey. Listen, you don't have to know why in order to put your trust in God. That's what trust is all about. Trust is about you not having all the information, but having enough to say, I believe you. Don't you have enough? You got to ask yourself where you are right now in your walk. Don't you have enough? You have to know why in order for you to get yourself together and to fill your home with oil. You don't have to know why. God wasn't saying, listen, cheer up. God was saying there's something better on the horizon for you. This was not God saying, come on, kid, it's going to be all right. No, this was God saying, listen, don't forfeit the best days that are ahead. Listen, though you can't see it over the horizon, there's an expected end that you will not believe. You are going to have some days with this king that will make these days pale. Listen, you're going to anoint two kings. That's what God was doing. I'm increasing you through this trial, and here you are mourning. I'm increasing you after what looked like a bad thing and a series of bad things. God is saying the doors are about to open for you, and here you crying. Here you are mad at me as if I'm not continually blessing you, as if I've never forgotten how to bless you. You can't see your next thing through tears. So God is wiping tears up right now because the pity party is over and the oil is still needed. I want you to get that. There's some things that God is shaking up because the oil is still in you. Listen, Samuel had lost confidence. When you look at this, I mean, Saul is dead. Israel is dead. It doesn't have a king. Listen, you've heard the phrase, one monkey don't stop the show. Listen, God has a multitude of monkeys in his arsenal. Know that. Listen, one monkey doesn't stop the show. He comes and says, listen, fill your horn with oil and go. I'm sending you to Jesse, the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons. Listen, you want to have a king? I'm not just letting you destroy yourself. I'm going to now pick a king to show you as an example of the type of king that I choose. Listen, that was your choice. The fact that it failed, some of us have got to realize that, listen, I did that without God. I did that on my own. I walked into that thing with my own confidence. I was pretty sure that I had the backing that I needed, and I forgot. I forgot that in some of these things, God allows failure for a reason. Some of the choices that are made, God allows it for a reason. We can't take it personally. We've got to recognize I'm a messenger. There's some messages that are going to be rejected, and that's a part of it. Your job is to give the message, not to make sure that everybody is warm and fuzzy, not to make sure everybody gets it. So the love of God here is awesome. And I want you to see this. God rejects his feelings. God comes back to Samuel and says, no, I'm rejecting your feelings. Everything your feelings have spoken to your mind, I'm removing now by inserting confidence back into you. God is coming to a man who's lost his personal confidence, and God gave him a reason once again to be confident. Samuel's looking at his life and there's no reason to be confident. He feels like a failure. And God is saying, I'm moving forward with you. And I want you to grasp that today. I'm moving forward with you. I'm not moving without you. I'm not going to the next place without you. I'm not firing you. I'm not accepting your resignation. God comes in and he literally tells Samuel, listen, you still work here. God doesn't come and say, what are you doing in retirement? He says, listen, I know what the impediment is. You still are mad about what I did. You still, because you didn't like it, you decided you're not going to work. No, listen, I'm going to come to you with an assignment. Here's how God begins to chastise Samuel. He chastises him with an assignment. God is coming to some of you right now, and this is your chastisement. I'm letting you know I'm interrupting the pity party that you created. And with an assignment, not a lightning bolt. Listen, God just killed me. See, for some people, the chastisement is like, I just asked you to take me out of here. I'm just asking you to kill me. Just take me out now. And God comes and says, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change your atmosphere. You're in an atmosphere of depression. You are in an atmosphere of doubt. You're in an atmosphere that is just cloaking your vision. So God begins to change the atmosphere and the mentality by reminding him of his authority. Now, not Samuel's authority, but God's authority. When he begins to recognize God's authority, then you can hear what God said. He says, fill your home with oil. I don't care how rejected you may feel with them. You're not rejected with me. Fill your home with oil. They may have said, listen, old man, go in retirement. We don't want to hear you. But God says, listen, but if I be for you, who can be against you? You are not fired. Listen, but reminded. And that's what God is doing with you today. You are not fired, but you're being reminded that you are still on duty, that God has not accepted your resignation. He has not accepted your pity party. Whatever you said in the pity party has been overlooked. It did not work. If you were trying to make God mad, you just didn't do it. He's got an assignment for you. If you were trying to be indifferent and just like, I don't care. Listen, God is waking you up. He's got an assignment for you. The conviction, everything that you're feeling right now is about God saying, wake up. I have an assignment for you. The generation is calling you. I have an assignment for you. The problem is calling you. David, your Goliath is on the field. You're late. Listen, get out here because the great days of slaying giants is not over for you. The moments where you are going to be able to run toward an enemy and prevail is not over. Listen, this rejection was a part of it. This was all a part of it. There's no mistakes. There's no apologies. I'm not coming to say, I'm sorry, I should have told you. No, God is never going to allow the death or the failure of one person stop his vision. God is at work. And I want you to receive that right now. He's at work. And that work goes beyond any one man. Listen, the fact that you're hooked up, the fact that the person you thought was going to bless you is no longer in position. Listen, know this. God is in position. When you look at Samuel was paralyzed with mourning. He was paralyzed with grief. There are many people right now that are paralyzed with the thoughts of your past, paralyzed by things that have happened, and you are still in that past. No way in the present seeking anything for the future. But know this, here's the blessing that I want to leave this with you. Though you may be paralyzed, God is not paralyzed. After this tragic rebellion by Saul, Samuel just was stuck in place. And I bet his brain wanted to get out. I bet you his spirit knew, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be stagnant here. I'm not supposed to be here just doing nothing. But he was paralyzed. But the wonderful thing about this is that your God is not paralyzed. I want you to get that today. And I want you to shout that today. And I want you to say that to yourself over and over again. I may be paralyzed, but God is not paralyzed. And he knows exactly what I need to do. Fill your horn up with oil. Begin to do the things you did when you were on point. Begin to do the things you did when you were feeling it. Listen, because I'm not feeling it, God doesn't come and give him another feeling. He doesn't come and replace the feeling of mourning with the feeling of joy. God comes and says, an assignment is here, whether you happy or sad. An assignment is here, is whether you like it or not. But here's the thing. The blessing is that his spirit is going to change in the assignment. He's going to see the will of God unfold right in front of his face in the assignment. Listen, the couch potato days are over. You just watching TV or just flipping through the internet is over. God is saying, listen, there's an assignment for you. The days of you just sitting back and criticizing and looking around and blaming and making sure you know who the problem is, not realizing that you have a limited time to do your part. Listen, you've been mourning long enough. You've been complaining long enough. You've been in a pity party long enough. And God is saying enough is enough. Fill your home with oil. I want you to receive that today. If you don't receive anything else, I want you to hear what God is saying to you. You still have oil. No matter what you tried to do, no matter how much you poured out, no matter what lifestyle you went back to and thought like, all my oil is gone. God says, now fill your horn up. You have enough oil to actually fill up this horn for the job. And I trust the oil that you have because I gave it to you. Listen, you can't throw this away. You can't forfeit this. It's yours. And I want you to receive that right now. It's yours. So listen, As you just, I hope that you heard this whole message. I hope that you will share this. But listen, I want you to just know that, listen, God is trying to speak to you right now. Open your ears so you can hear. God is speaking to you right now. My prayer for you is that God, that he will open up your ears so that you can hear this is the way and walk in it. Listen, you are not stuck any longer. The days of your paralysis are over. Fill your home with oil. Do what you did when you were on point. You can remember now the things that you did. Pray like you did when you were on point. Serve like you did when you were on point. And literally seek after him like you did when you were on point. And watch and see. The assignment is going to change your life. I want you to receive that today. The assignment is going to change your life. Your best days are in front of you. God bless you. Have an awesome rest of your Sunday.